the quiet hum of a laboratory, beneath fluorescent lights and locked doors, even a soda can become a state secret. Aluminum reflects more than light. It reflects power, contracts, and decades of disciplined silence. Because markets don't just trade products. They trade formulas, processes, and trust, and sometimes those things leak. This is not a story about sugar water or branding genius. It's about how invisible knowledge can be worth more than gold, how profit leaves fingerprints long after the theft, and how a simple can become the center of a $120 million betrayal. So the question is not what was stolen, but why was it priceless? Coca-Cola is not just a beverage company. It is one of the most sophisticated distribution and intellectual property machines ever built. By the early 2000s, Coca-Cola products were consumed more than 1.7 billion times a day in over 200 countries, generating tens of billions in annual revenue. The red logo was everywhere, but the real value wasn't in the drink itself. It was in how that drink was produced, packaged, transported, and protected at planetary scale. At the heart of this system sat something deceptively ordinary: the aluminum can. Lightweight, stackable, cheap, and engineered down to microscopic tolerances. A single fraction of a millimeter meant millions saved in aluminum costs. A small change in lining chemistry meant longer shelf life. A subtle adjustment in pressure resistance meant fewer explosions during shipping across deserts, oceans, and altitude changes. Multiply those optimizations across hundreds of billions of cans, and suddenly, the can itself becomes a financial weapon. By the time this story begins, Coca-Cola's packaging research was guarded like military intelligence. Blueprints, chemical coatings, stress test data, all siloed, encrypted, compartmentalized. Employees signed strict NDAs. Labs operated on a need-to-know basis. Because whoever controlled the can controlled the margins. And that's when the unthinkable happened. Not a hack, not a factory raid, but something far more dangerous: access from the inside. What followed would expose how fragile corporate secrecy really is, and how one quiet leak could be valued at $120 million. To understand how a Coke can could ever be worth 9 figures, we have to rewind, not to a crime scene, but to an idea. In the late 20th century, soda was no longer competing on taste. It was competing on scale. As global demand exploded after World War II, Coca-Cola faced a mathematical problem disguised as a manufacturing one. How do you move liquid across continents at near-zero failure, at the lowest possible cost, forever? The glass was heavy. The plastic was imperfect. Steel was expensive. Aluminum became the quiet answer. By the 1960s and 70s, aluminum cans reshaped the economics of beverages. They were light enough to ship cheaply, strong enough to survive pressure, and infinitely recyclable, a perfect loop for global capitalism. But perfection required obsession. Coca-Cola didn't just buy cans. It co-developed them. Behind closed doors, Coke engineers worked with aluminum suppliers to shave microns off thickness, redesign pull tabs to reduce metal use, and invent polymer linings that prevented corrosion without contaminating flavor. Each innovation was small in isolation, but catastrophic to competitors who didn't have it. A 1-gram reduction per can sounds trivial. Across 100 billion cans, it is the difference between profit and vulnerability. So Coca-Cola built invisible architecture, proprietary specifications, supplier exclusivity contracts, internal testing protocols that never left the lab. The can became less a container and more a system, one that only Coke fully understood. And here's the crucial part. These innovations were never patented. Why? Because patents expire. Secrecy doesn't. Instead, Coke relied on trade secrets, protected not by law alone but by culture, compartmentalization, and trust. Engineers knew only pieces. Suppliers saw fragments. No one outside the inner circle could see the whole blueprint. This strategy worked for decades. Margins improved silently. Waste declined. Competitors copied the look, but never the efficiency, until the system encountered its greatest weakness. Not technology, not regulation, but people. Because every fortress built on silence depends on one assumption: that those inside will never speak. And in the early 2000s, that assumption quietly broke, setting the stage for a power shift Coca-Cola never saw coming. The break didn't come with alarms or shattered glass. It came with emails, manila folders, and whispered meetings in neutral places. In 2006, Coca-Cola executives were alerted to something unsettling. Internal documents, highly specific packaging data, were being offered for sale, not leaked online, not shared casually, sold, quietly, strategically, to competitors who understood exactly what they were worth. What was on offer wasn't the legendary Coke formula. It was something arguably more valuable in the modern economy: process intelligence. Blueprints detailing can tolerances, material stress limits, internal cost reduction models, supplier pricing structures, future packaging roadmaps. This was knowledge accumulated over decades, knowledge that allowed Coke to save fractions of a cent per unit, billions of times over. According to internal estimates later revealed in court proceedings, the competitive damage from this data falling into rival hands was valued at up to $120 million. And the source wasn't a hacker collective or foreign intelligence agency. It was a Coca-Cola employee. Inside the company, the timing couldn't have been worse. The mid-2000s were already volatile. Aluminum prices were fluctuating. PepsiCo was pushing aggressive packaging innovation. Emerging markets demanded cheaper, more durable cans. Margins were under pressure. In that environment, information asymmetry was everything. When Coca-Cola contacted the FBI, what followed played out like a corporate espionage thriller. Undercover agents posed as buyers. Meetings were recorded. Evidence was gathered methodically, patiently, the same way corporations build power. The arrest revealed a sobering truth. Trade secrets don't disappear overnight. They walk out, one trusted person at a time. The case sent shockwaves through boardrooms across America, not because of the crime itself, but because of what it exposed. Coca-Cola had done everything right. Compartmentalization, legal safeguards, cultural discipline. And still the system bent. The power shift wasn't to a rival company. It was to risk awareness. After the case, corporations quietly rewrote internal security doctrines. Access was tightened. Digital tracking intensified. Behavioral monitoring became normalized. Trust was no longer cultural, it became algorithmic. The cans survived. The margins survived. But the illusion that secrecy alone could protect power did not. Because once information is priced, it becomes portable. And that realization opened a far deeper question. How exactly did this knowledge generate so much profit in the first place? The answer lies not in theft, but in the hidden machinery of modern capitalism itself. The real secret was never the can. It was the leverage embedded inside it. Coca-Cola's profit engine operated on margins so thin they were almost invisible, fractions of a cent per unit. But when multiplied across the global scale, those fractions became rivers of money. Here's the mechanism. Coca-Cola didn't negotiate aluminum prices like a buyer. It shaped aluminum markets like an architect. By standardizing ultra-specific can dimensions and performance requirements, Coke locked suppliers into custom production lines. Once a factory was tuned to Coke's specs, switching clients became costly. This gave Coca-Cola quiet pricing power, not through dominance but dependency. Then came volume forecasting. With unmatched global data, Coca-Cola could predict demand months in advance. Suppliers couldn't. That asymmetry allowed Coke to secure long-term contracts at favorable rates, transferring risk downstream while keeping flexibility upstream. But the most powerful lever was psychological. Internal models showed that consumers rarely noticed changes under 3% in weight or shape. That insight allowed continuous cost reduction without brand damage. A gram here, a micron there, always invisible, always compounding. This is why the stolen documents mattered. They revealed where the margins were hiding. Competitors didn't need to match Coke's scale, they just needed to see the map. And once seen, it couldn't be unseen. In modern capitalism, advantage isn't created by innovation alone. It's created by knowing where not to compete. The Coke Can wasn't a container. It was a financial instrument. And when that instrument was exposed, it forced a reckoning, not just for corporations, but for the people living inside these systems every day. Because behind every optimized process, there is a human cost. Every can that rolls off a production line carries more than a beverage. It carries decisions made in boardrooms, labs, and negotiations most people will never see. For workers, optimization meant speed. For suppliers, it meant pressure. For consumers, it meant consistency, the illusion that nothing ever changes. But systems like this don't erase humanity. They reorganize it. Engineers spent careers perfecting tolerances no one would praise. Procurement teams learned to speak in decimals that decided livelihoods. Factory workers adapted to machines tuned for maximum efficiency, where downtime wasn't just costly, it was unacceptable. And when the theft was uncovered, the response rippled outward. Security tightened, access narrowed, trust became conditional. Employees were no longer just contributors, they became potential risks. Surveillance software replaced informal oversight. Silence replaced openness. Not out of cruelty, out of fear. This is the paradox of modern corporate power. The same systems that create stability also demand control. The same efficiencies that lower prices also narrow human discretion. For consumers, the story remained invisible. A Coke still costs roughly the same. The can still felt the same in the hand. But every purchase echoed choices made decades earlier, choices about secrecy, scale, and control. There are no villains here. No heroes either. Only systems designed to outlast individuals. And once you see that, the heist stops being a crime story and becomes a mirror. Because the question isn't why someone tried to sell a secret. It's why that secret was worth so much in the first place. And what that says about how modern wealth is really built. The $120 million Coke Can Heist was never really about theft. It was about exposure. It revealed how modern power is assembled quietly, through process, precision, and patience. How wealth today is less about invention and more about control of invisible systems. And how the most valuable assets in the global economy often don't sit in vaults or factories, but in spreadsheets, tolerances, and human memory. A soda can look simple because it has been perfected into silence. Its complexity is erased by repetition. Its value is hidden by familiarity. And yet, beneath that red label lives an entire philosophy of capitalism. Optimize what people don't notice, protect what competitors can't see, and compound advantages until they feel inevitable. The heist didn't change Coca-Cola's dominance, but it changed how corporations think about trust, secrecy, and human access. It reminded boardrooms that systems are only as secure as the people inside them, and that information, once priced, will always try to move. So the next time you open a can, pause for a second. Not to taste the drink, but to consider the machinery behind it. What other everyday objects are hiding billion-dollar secrets? What other systems shape your life without ever asking permission? If this story changed the way you see business, power, or the objects around you, let us know in the comments. Like the video if you value deep, honest storytelling. Subscribe if you want more documentaries that look past branding and into the systems beneath. Because the most important stories in capitalism aren't advertised. They're engineered.